Chapter 113. After finishing his preparations, Su Len stretched his body and prepared to hunt the dragon. Ding! Defend the territory quest activated. After your tireless efforts, your territory is finally on the right track. However, a group of Cryopteris has set their sights on this place. They are using this place as a hunting ground. Please take care of the Cryopteris as soon as possible. The cold voice of the system rang in his ears. Su Luen took out the steel-made javelin and checked if it was damaged. Then he put the javelin in a place within reach to make sure that he could throw the javelin as soon as possible. After preparing the javelin, Su Len took out some other things he had prepared. There were a few steel chains. He wanted to use ropes before, but after testing the strength of the ropes, he found that ropes were not strong enough. There were no chemical materials like nylon in this era. The strength of ropes was too low. Cryopteris were very strong. They often hunted large herbivores. Many animals like bison and giant antlers weighed more than a ton. Cryopteris could easily pick them up and fly back to the mountain peak thousands of meters high. The ropes in this world could not withstand their strength at all. In addition to the steel chains, Su Len also prepared a few steel balls to restrict the flight of the Cryopteris. If there were too many Cryopteris and the chains could not restrain them in time, these steel balls would affect their flight. The javelin was connected to two steel balls with chains. Even if the Cryopteris could fly, it would be difficult for it to maintain its balance after being hit. The steel javelin had special barbs on it. It would be difficult to break free after being hit. Be careful. Hathaway looked at the figure and then clenched the staff in her hand. The cold wind on the mountain peak whistled and rolled up countless ice crystals. There was a layer of steel-like ice under their feet. It was very slippery when they stepped on it. In addition to the whistling cold wind, there was a bottomless abyss just a few meters away. Without enough courage, they would not dare to move in this environment. This area was very narrow, could only accommodate a few people at most. It was impossible to use human wave tactics. Moreover, even if there were many people, there was no space to dodge once the Cryopteris attacked in such a narrow environment. The biggest possibility was that they would be swept directly into the cliff next to them. Cryopteris hunted once every 2 days. Normally, the male hunted while the female stayed at home. Su Len saw Cryopteris returning from a hunt when he was climbing the mountain. They were most likely in their nest now. Su Len carefully approached the Cryopteris nest. The Cryopteris was very confident in its nest. Building a nest in such a dangerous place could stop 95% of the attackers. Walking slowly along the cliff, the whistling mountain wind completely blew away some of the sound. After bypassing a few steep rocks, a stone platform appeared in front of him. The stone platform was more than 10 meters high, and on top of it was the nest of the ice Quetzalcoatlus. It was a nest made of animal skin and some unknown materials. It looked like an enlarged bird's nest. There was a Quetzalcoatlus inside, and outside the nest, there was an even larger Quetzalcoatlus. Passing through the gap between the Cryopteris wings, Su Len saw a white dragon egg. It seemed that the Cryopteris had built their nest here to hatch their offspring. This was good news for Su Len. With the dragon egg as a restraint, the Cryopteris would not all rush up to attack when they discovered an intruder. This would greatly reduce the pressure on Su Len. Furthermore, the winged dragon egg was very precious. It was very difficult to tame an adult pterosaur. Only by hatching a dragon egg could one tame a pterosaur. In the human world, the price of a winged dragon egg was very high. An egg that could hatch a pterosaur was worth around 3,000 kinner. Even a dead egg that could not hatch could be sold for 500 kinner. The winged dragon egg contained a large amount of elemental energy that could strengthen the body. It was very popular among the nobles. There was no place to hide on the platform. As soon as Su Len appeared, the Cryopteris noticed him. Seeing that someone had invaded its nest, the male Cryopteris roared and immediately flapped its wings and flew down. The Cryopteris flew into the sky with a gust of wind. After circling in the sky, it dived directly towards Su Len. A foul smell came from its bloody mouth full of sharp teeth. The ice Quetzalcoatlus dived very fast. Just as it was about to reach Su Luen rolled to the side in an instant, and then waved his hand to throw a 2-meter-long fine steel javelin. In such a short distance, the Cryopterus only had time to turn its body sideways. The steel javelin instantly pierced through its wings. The Cryopterus cried out in pain. Dragon blood splashed everywhere. His body tilted and fell to the ground. However, the pterosaur's flying ability was very strong. It quickly regained control of its body and struggled to fly higher. How could Su Lin give it the chance? He pulled the chain behind the javelin hard and then pulled hard. The huge force made the chain very tight. The pterosaur's wings were very strong. Although the wings were injured and the dragon blood was spilling, its strength was not reduced at all. The steel chain made creaking sounds as it was pulled, and many parts of the chain had been deformed. Bang! In the end, the steel chain could not withstand the huge pulling force and broke. The ice pterosaur, freed from its shackles, wanted to fly up. However, even if it desperately flapped its dragon wings, it could not maintain its balance at all. It almost spun and fell from a height of more than 10 meters, and then hit the cold hard rock hard. Su Lin threw away the broken chain in his hand, took out the spear from the storage space, and then rushed to the place where the Cryopterus fell. He was going to kill the male Cryopterus before the female Cryopterus could react. The distance of more than 10 meters was crossed in an instant. The spear in Sullen's hand was about to pierce into the Cryopterus's head and completely end its life. At this moment, a cold light flashed in the eyes of the struggling Cryopterus, and then it opened its horrible and ferocious mouth in an instant. Sullen's heart sank. Without thinking, he dodged to the side. A strong stench hit him in the face. Frost breath. The extremely cold breath was spat out in an instant. Su Lin only had time to move his body before his left arm was covered by the frost breath. His left arm quickly condensed into ice at a speed visible to the naked eye. The piercing cold spread and continued to spread to his body. At the same time, the still struggling Cryopterus opened its complete wing and slapped at Su Lin with a huge wind pressure. Dragon Wing Strike. This was the most dangerous attack of the pterosaur. As the most muscular part of the dragon, the strength of their wings was very amazing. After the frost breath hit Su Lin, it immediately slapped at his head. Chapter 114. Su Lin continued to attack. The energy in his body exploded instantly, shattering the ice on the surface of his body. He exerted force on his feet, shattering the rock that was as hard as steel. His body rushed to the left at an even faster speed than before. Boom! A loud noise was heard. The sharp wind cut off a few strands of his hair. Su Lin dodged the dragon wing attack by a hair's breadth. Cracks appeared on the rocks behind him, and the hard ice shattered into powder. Using dragon breath and dragon wing strike continuously was very taxing on the ice Quetzalcoatlus. They would have a very short period of weakness. Su Lin held the spear in his hand and activated the thunder lightning spear. Lightning flashed around him. His body flashed, and in the next second he appeared beside Cryopterus. The spear in his hand pierced through its jaw. The sharp spear pierced through the tough dragon skin, and then went all the way up along the gap between the frontal bones, tearing through the muscles and piercing towards the brain. Boiling dragon blood gushed out, dyeing his body red, and a piercing pain came from his skin. The blood of dragons and Euron was corrosive. For example, the blood of the red dragon was almost as hot as magma. An ordinary person would be burned to death by the dragon's blood. The 3-meter-long spear pierced the ice Quetzalcoatlus brain through the gaps between its bones. The lightning attached to the spear paralyzed the ice Quetzalcoatlus. In the end, half of the spear pierced into the ice Quetzalcoatlus brain. As a viper, its brain was still very fragile. After being pierced by the spear and destroyed by the lightning, the ice Quetzalcoatlus body shook a few times in an instant and then collapsed. The sound of wings flapping was heard. The female Cryopterus in the nest saw that the male Cryopterus was severely injured. She immediately became restless and flew up. Then, she pounced on Su Lin. Hearing the strange noise behind him, Su Lin picked up the other spear without thinking. The lightning in his body instantly covered his whole body. He exerted force on his feet and turned around abruptly. The The spear that was covered with lightning flew out like a bolt of lightning and hit Cryopterus' abdomen directly. The powerful power of thunder and lightning instantly detonated in its body. The ice Quetzalcoatlus' body stiffened instantly, and then it fell directly from mid-air. With a bang, it hit the cold rock, and then slid to Su Luin under the action of inertia. Taking out another steel javelin, Su Luin jumped up. Strong lightning flashed back and forth on his body, and the javelin in his hand was wrapped in thunder and lightning. Then, the spear pierced through Cryopterus' head with a thunderous force. The female Cryopterus fell to the ground. Su Len took a deep breath. The lightning on his body had faded. It was not easy to kill 2 Cryopterus in a row. These Euron had high damage. If Su Len was not careful, he would be injured. The male Cryopterus was also very cunning. If it was not for his quick reaction, he would have been severely injured by the pterosaur's full-force wing attack. Su Len took out the spear and the spear that was buried in the skull. He used ice to freeze the corpses. He did not have time to deal with the 2 pterosaur corpses. Although the battle was short, it had attracted the attention of the other Cryopterus. At this time, 2 more Cryopterus were flying towards him. Behind them, 2 more Cryopterus were approaching. Without stopping, Su Len quickly jumped off the platform and ran back to where he came from. Facing 4 Cryopterus at once was very stressful for Su Len. After killing 2 Cryopterus in a row, Su Len gained a lot of experience. However, he was still some distance away from leveling up to 21. After seeing Su Len rushing over, Hathaway stared at the Cryopterus in the sky, ready to attack at any time. Thunder Lightning Spear. The violent power of thunder and lightning instantly erupted from his body, and an energy field appeared around him. Even on this mountain peak that was thousands of meters high, the perennial wind and snow stopped. The sky was shrouded in dark clouds, and lightning flashed from time to time, illuminating the dusky sky. The 2 Cryopterus circled in the sky and then swooped down towards Su Len. The wind and snow they brought with them formed small whirlwinds in the sky. Frost breath. Frost breath. When they were about 10 meters away from Su Len, the 2 Cryopterus spat out a wave of extremely cold frost at the same time. The temperature of the cliff, which was already very cold, dropped again. Su Len quickly jumped on the cliff. After running for 10 meters on the steep and cold cliff, Su Len finally escaped the range of the frost breath. He raised the javelin in his hand towards the sky. Accompanied by the crackling sound of thunder and lightning, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and directly hit the steel javelin. The bright lightning instantly lit up the entire sky. Under the support of the lightning power, a blue lightning appeared on the steel javelin, and the entire javelin was drawn into a bolt of lightning at this moment. Sensing the terrifying power of the lightning javelin, the 2 Cryopterus swooped down again. Their huge wings stuck close to the cliff and swept over. They were determined to sweep Su Len off the mountain and off the cliff to his death. The violent power of thunder and lightning quickly converged, and the spreading electric snakes ran all over Su Luin's body. Even he felt a little numb, and the lightning brought with it a burning pain. Feeling the violent power of thunder and lightning in his body, a faint electric light appeared in Su Luin's eyes. Dense electric currents flickered around his body, and the javelin in his hand had completely turned into dazzling thunder and lightning. Lightning javelin throw. Su Len instantly threw out the lightning javelin that had reached its limit. The 2 Cryopterus were very close. Su Len could even clearly see the pieces of flesh hanging from their white sharp teeth. A dazzling bolt of lightning appeared and instantly flew towards the Cryopterus that was slightly in front. Rumble. A bolt of lightning exploded in mid-air. The roar of thunder instantly covered all other sounds. In the dazzling lightning, the lightning javelin instantly hit the frost Quetzalcoatlus. The violent power of lightning exploded out of thin air. The hit Cryopterus was directly wrapped in lightning. Even the nearby Cryopterus was affected. The violent lightning exploded in an instant. The hit Cryopterus did not have the slightest ability to resist. Under the effect of inertia, it directly hit the hard mountain, rolled down, and finally was blocked by a few rocks. However, the Cryopterus was already dead. There was a terrible bloody hole in its body, and the surrounding dragon skin was scorched black. The other Cryopteris was affected. One of its wings was scorched black, and its body was stiff. It struggled in midair, trying to fly away. Chapter 115. Fireball. An orange-red fireball the size of a basketball suddenly appeared and flew directly towards the injured Cryopteris. The Cryopteris, which had not fully recovered from its paralysis, had no time to dodge and was hit by the fireball. Boom! As a cold Euron, their resistance to fire spells was very low. Although Fireball was a level 3 evocation spell, it was the most powerful low-level spell. Many level 4 spells were not necessarily comparable to it. Otherwise, the Five Fires sect would not have emerged. The orange-red fireball exploded after hitting the Cryopteris. The scorching flames instantly caused serious damage to the Cryopteris. The Cryopteris, which was barely flying, was directly hit by the fireball. His huge body fell from the sky and hit the cold rock with a bang. Ice and gravel flew everywhere, and blood slowly flowed out under its body. The Cryopteris cried out a few times, and its struggle became weaker and weaker. It seemed that it would not live for long. Before Su Len could catch his breath, the other two Cryopteris had attacked again. The death of their companion made them even angrier, and because of the previous battle, they were very vigilant against Sullen's javelins. The biggest advantage of the Cryopteris was not their powerful dragon breath, but their ability to fly. With the ability to fly, they had the opportunity to attack and retreat. The best way to kill them was to make them lose their ability to fly. The two Cryopteris took turns to attack Su Len. Every time Su Len was about to throw his javelins at one of them, the other Cryopteris would immediately attack him. If Su Len insisted on attacking, it was very likely that he would be severely injured by the claws or wings of the other Cryopteris. The two Cryopteris cooperated very well, which gave Su Len a headache. He wanted Hathaway to launch a sneak attack, but the two Cryopteris were very vigilant. Cryopteris, who could fly, would have a high chance of dodging the fireball if he couldn't sneak an attack. Hathaway had tried it once before. However, there was still a solution. A few pieces of rock and ice hit his face, causing him a slight pain. Su Len dodged the Cryopteris's wings again and continued to dodge. Spells like Flame Arrow or Scorching Ray could be used to attack, but they weren't very effective against first circle spells. Haste, Cat's Grace, Bear's Endurance, Elemental Resistance. Several spiritual lights entered Su Luen's body in succession, which improved his already sensitive body again. Even if he was walking on the smooth and steep rock wall, he could now walk on it as if it were flat ground. The two Cryopteris were very cunning. They cooperated with each other to exhaust Sullen's stamina. In such a steep and cold environment, a fierce battle would consume a lot of stamina. Once Sullen's stamina ran out, the two Cryopteris would swarm him and tear him apart. Su Len took out another chain from his storage space. The two ends of the chain were connected to two metal balls. They were specially made by Su Len to disrupt the balance of the Cryopteris. Compared to the javelins, the chain balls were almost useless, but they could disrupt the balance of the Cryopteris. Compared to the javelins, the chain balls had a much larger attack range and were harder to dodge. Soon, the two Cryopteris swooped down again. Su Len rolled away and threw the chain in his hand. He jumped up again and dodged the attack of the other Cryopteris. Life and death were decided in this moment. The Cryopteris swooped down on Su Len. He had no room to dodge. Suppressing the soreness in his muscles, Su Len took a deep breath and rolled back along the ground. The hard and cold rocks hit his body, causing him pain. When the ice Quetzalcoatlus saw the chain coming towards it, it flapped its wings and adjusted its direction to avoid it. But this time, it miscalculated. Su Luen pulled the other side of the chain in his hand and shook it slightly to change the direction of the chain ball. Then the chain wrapped around the ice Quetzalcoatlus again. After loosening the chain, the adjusted chain hit the long and narrow neck of the ice Quetzalcoatlus. Under the effect of inertia, the chain wrapped around the ice Quetzalcoatlus's right wing and upper claws. Although it was only one round, it was a big problem for the ice Quetzalcoatlus. As it flapped its wings, The two heavy chains began to sway around irregularly, which seriously affected the ice Quetzalcoatlus' flying state. The ice Quetzalcoatlus, which could fly freely, suddenly became like a baby eagle that had just learned how to fly, wobbling. After wrapping the chain around the Cryopteris, Su-Len ignored the pterosaur because the other pterosaur was about to attack him. A steel spear appeared in his hand in an instant. He blocked the pterosaur's sharp claws with a horizontal sweep. Then he used the momentum to dodge the pterosaur's wings. Fireball! While Su-Len was fighting with the other Cryopteris, Hathaway immediately attacked the pterosaur whose flying ability was greatly reduced. Cryopteris, whose flying ability was greatly reduced because of the chain, watched in horror as the fireball hit its wings. With a shrill cry, Cryopteris fell from the sky and smashed heavily on the cold rocks. No one knew if it was dead or alive. The Cryopteris that was fighting with Su-Len realized that all its companions were dead. It spat a breath of ice at Su-Len and flapped its wings in an attempt to escape. However, it was already too late. Faced with the bone-chilling frost breath, Su-Luen had no intention of dodging. After activating Bear's tenacity and elemental resistance, the frost breath's power had weakened significantly. He could now take it head-on. Thunder Lightning Spear. A violent power of thunder and lightning gushed out of his body. Bolts of lightning jumped in the sky and then directly hit the spear in Su-Luen's right hand. The 3-meter-long spear flashed with lightning in an instant, and the violent lightning kept jumping. Even Su-Luen couldn't bear such a powerful electric current. Su-Luen endured the burning sensation of the lightning, looked at the panicked ice Quetzalcoatlus, and threw it at it with all his might. Thunder Spear Throw. The powerful force tore the surrounding air apart. The lightning spear was like a flash of lightning, and then it ruthlessly pierced into the back of the ice Quetzalcoatlus. The 3-meter-long spear almost completely sank into its body. The dazzling lightning burst out, and the escaping ice Quetzalcoatlus let out a sorrowful cry. It fell from the sky like a bird with broken wings. P.S. Thank you to Heavy Dragon Knight for the tip of 200 coins. Thank you to Gue Hong for the tip of 200 coins. Thank you to Chong Is Ho Yi for the tip of 100 coins. Thank you to Traceless Immortal Dragon for the tip of 888 coins. Thank you to Loneliness for the tip of 100 coins. Chapter 116. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have killed Cryopteris and completed the Territory Guard quest. You have obtained a golden treasure chest. You have completed the Territory Guard quest. You have obtained 10,000 experience points and +1 to all attributes. You have killed Cryopteris and gained 15 peace of mind and 15 stability in your territory. Congratulations, host. You and your hero Hathaway have killed 6 Cryopteris. You have obtained 60,000 experience points. Congratulations, host. You have leveled up. You have obtained 2 skill points and 2 free attribute points. A golden treasure chest. Congratulations, host. You have broken through LV20 and reached LV21. You have broken through the limits of mortals and stepped into the realm of legends. Congratulations, host. You have broken through to the realm of legends. Your storage space has expanded to 10 cubic meters. If you want to increase it further, please explore on your own. Your advanced sturdy and advanced tenacity have evolved into legendary sturdy and legendary tenacity. You have obtained a skill fusion point, legendary. You have obtained partial information about the legendary ability, Thunder Domain. You have obtained partial information about the legendary ability, Lightning Control. You have killed Cryopteris. You have obtained the title, Dragon Slayer, your own. Dragon Slayer. As someone who has killed the most powerful dragon-type creature in this world, you have an even stronger deterrent force. Your name has begun to spread across the continent. Fame +2. Su-Len felt the surging power in his body. After breaking through to the realm of legends, he could clearly feel that his power had increased once again. In the depths of his soul, a spark of lightning appeared. Su-Len's soul instantly came to a magical place. It was an ocean that contained endless power. All kinds of power mixed together and emitted a shocking power. These powers were filled with violent power. It was like chaos. Sulen was like a small drop of water here. Sullen's soul underwent some strange changes under this powerful power. His originally blurry soul became much clearer. There seemed to be no concept of time or space here. Sulen didn't know how long he stayed here. Perhaps it was a second, perhaps it was tens of thousands of years. Then his soul instantly left the space and returned to his body. Looking at the cold snowflake in his hand, Sulen knew that only a moment had passed. Feeling the power in his body, Sulen found that the violent power of thunder had become much gentler. It was also much smoother to control, and the previous feeling had disappeared. The original Advanced Sturdy and Advanced Tenacity were upgraded to Legendary Sturdy and Legendary Tenacity. Legendary Sturdy had 2 more points than Advanced Sturdy and 2 more points, and Legendary Tenacity. Legendary Tenacity. After a long period of training and battle, your body has surpassed the limits of an ordinary person. You have gained stronger vitality. Normal attacks will reduce damage to you by 100%. Permanent increase of health points by 100%. Increase of health points by 100%. Increase of health points by 100%. At the same time, you have gained elemental resistance. All elemental attacks will be reduced by 20%. Magic resistance plus 20. With the Legendary Tenacity talent, Sullen's defense had reached a ridiculous level. In addition to elemental resistance and magic resistance, he would have no problem taking on normal spells. He could even try taking a bath in lava. Advancing to Legendary wasn't a simple matter of stacking data. Although data was important, it was more important to start touching the power of laws. He had a deeper understanding of the power of thunder. Originally, he thought that he was very familiar with the control and use of thunder. However, after touching the power of laws, he realized how crude he used this power in the past. Many times, he would waste a lot of unnecessary power. After feeling the power in his body, Sulen began to collect the spoils of war. After becoming a legendary, he still needed time to familiarize himself with the power he gained. The corpses of Cryopteris in front of him had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Although Cryopteris was a Euron, as long as it was related to dragons, all kinds of materials would become very valuable. Hathaway also ran out from the gap where she was hiding. She jumped up from afar and threw herself into Sullen's arms. She pushed Sulen back a few steps and sat on a rock. Seeing the bloodstains on Sullen's body, Hathaway became nervous. She touched his body with her small white hands. "You're hurt." "Okay, I'm fine. This blood belongs to the Cryopteris." Sulen grabbed Hathaway's small hands. If she continued to touch him, he would lose control. This place was cold and not a good place. He still liked to go back and sleep on the blanket. Seeing that Sulen was fine, she was relieved. Then, she let out a cheer and ran to the corpse of a Cryopteris. Sulen tidied up his tight clothes and walked over. So many Cryopteris, so many magic materials. I'm rich. Sulen walked to Hathaway's side and found that she was touching Cryopteris' wings and muttering to herself. Her eyes were shining with the light that belonged to Kinner. Sulen realized for the first time that this girl was a money grubber. "Wake up. Your saliva is freezing." Sulen pinched Hathaway's delicate little face and teased her. "What?" Hathaway subconsciously wiped the corners of her mouth with her hand, and then realized, "You lied to me." Then she was ready to fight with Sulen. Sulen reached out his hand and pressed Hathaway's head. Hathaway, who was squatting on the ground, could not stand up at all. Her 2 arms were swinging back and forth as if she was swimming. As a wizard, her strength was no match for Sulen, who was in human form. "Okay, stop fooling around. It's getting late. We have to get rid of these Cryopteris quickly. The value of these corpses will decrease if we delay any longer." "Humph, I'll remember this. I'll deal with you when we get back," Hathaway said angrily. Sulen laughed in his heart. "You want to deal with me? You've become arrogant after a few days of not fighting. When we get back, I'll let you have a taste of my advanced plasma cannon." Cryopteris corpses were very valuable. The smallest of these Cryopteris had a wingspan of 15 meters, and the largest was 18 meters. It was basically impossible to transport all of them back. Sullen's storage space was only 10 cubic meters. There was no way he could fit so many Cryopterus corpses. Hathaway also had a few storage items on her, but they still could not fit all of these big guys. She could only disassemble these corpses and throw away the worthless and low-value parts. She could only bring back the valuable parts. P.S. Cryopterus attributes. Cryopterus, your own. Grade 4. Gregarious. Monster level. 17. Strength. 28. Will. 10. Vitality. 25. Agility. 15. Charm. 12. Skills. Dive, Dragon's Bite, Frost Breath, Dragon's Wing Strike. Talents. Advanced Strength, Advanced Tenacity, Dragon's Skin, Frost Resistance, Dragon's Bloodline, Flight, Poison Resistance. Difficulty, B+. Chapter 117. Cryopterus didn't have dragon scales, but its skin was still very tough. Dragon skin was an important material for making rare leather armor. It was even better than the Gale tiger skin. Hathaway had already decided to use these dragon skins to make a dragon skin robe for herself. Of course, this would have to wait until she became an advanced wizard. The dragon skin robe needed to use the softest and most magically conductive skin of these pterosaurs. Pterosaur meat couldn't be eaten directly. Pterosaur meat was poisonous. Ordinary people would be poisoned to death if they ate it. It needed a special method to neutralize the poison. After neutralizing the poison, the dragon meat tasted good and could improve one's physical fitness. In fact, many demon beast meat in this world had this effect. Those nobles only ate, drank, and played all day long, and didn't train hard, but most of them could become knights or trainee knights. In addition to good training, professional mentors, excellent breathing techniques, and long-term consumption of various kinds of demon beast meat. Long-term consumption of demon beast meat made their body much stronger than ordinary people. With professional training and excellent breathing techniques, as long as they were not too useless, it was not too difficult to activate their life energy and become a knight when they reached adulthood. However, it was very difficult for ordinary people. Knight training required a lot of meat, and ordinary people couldn't afford to feed a knight. Most of them could only rely on the nobles and become their servants. Su Len took out a skinning knife and began to skin the Cryopterus. Because of the previous battle, many parts of the dragon skin were damaged. Those damaged parts could only be thrown away. The dragon skin on the wings was not suitable for making leather armor. Those parts were more suitable for making blank scrolls. The most valuable part was the heart, which was an important material for making lesser dragon blood potions. As for the other organs, they could also be used as alchemy materials. The dragon blood could be made into magic ink and used to make scrolls. Among them, there was also the dragon penis, which was the favorite of the nobles. This thing was very popular among the human nobles. With all the bits and pieces added up, one pterosaur could earn about 20,000 kinner. It was a little troublesome to deal with the Cryopterus. It took Su Len a lot of effort to divide up the 6 ice pterosaurs. There were only a few Cryopterus corpses and some worthless items left. Sullen's 10 cubic meters storage space had been completely filled. Even Hathaway's spatial equipment had been filled. Su Len felt his heart ache when he saw that there were still some low-value materials on the ground that could not be taken away. Apart from the corpses of the pterosaurs, they found a total of 13 Cryopterus eggs in the 3 nests. Su Len used a piece of dragon skin to make a simple net to hold it. The storage space was unable to store living things. If these winged dragon eggs were placed inside, they would quickly become dead eggs. The price of a dragon egg that could hatch a pterosaur was not bad. Of course, the prerequisite was that you had a way to tame a dragon. Apart from the drows in the Underdark, the best taming method was the wizards. It was very easy for the drows in the Underdark to tame a dragon. They just needed to find a male pureblood dragon. It could be said that the drows in the Underdark were very similar to the succubi and lustful demons. Su Len planned to tame a few pterosaurs. When they grew up, they would not only be powerful, but they would also be very good as mounts. In addition to these dragon eggs, There were some kinner and some damaged things in the nests of the pterosaurs. They were probably left behind by the pterosaurs or by the hot-blooded young men who came here to be dragon slayers. These things were of average value. It was the nature of the dragons to collect wealth, and the same was true for these Euron. Su Len also found some nugget gold, crystal agate, and some gemstones in these nests. As for obtaining a huge amount of wealth by slaying a dragon, it was only possible to attack the true dragons that had lived for hundreds of years. However, not many people dared to do this and came back alive. There were not many things, so they could be put in a bag made of dragon skin. After packing up everything that could be taken away, Su Len was ready to leave with Hathaway. After dissecting the pterosaur's corpse, the place was filled with the smell of blood. The strong smell of blood would attract other predators. Although Su Len was not afraid of them, it was better to have less meaningless fights. A few vultures and other creatures were circling in the sky. These animals were drooling over the pterosaur's flesh, but because of the smell left behind by Su Len and the pterosaurs, they did not dare to come down. However, they could not endure for long. Seeing Sullen's bloody and dirty body, Hathaway frowned in disgust. Then she snapped her fingers, and a light flashed. All the flesh and filth on Sullen's body was cleaned up. Although many of the zero-circle spells were not lethal, they were very useful. After cleaning up, Su Len grabbed Hathaway's slender waist with one hand and carried the dragon skin bag with the other. He jumped off the cliff. The biting cold wind whistled past their ears. Hathaway shouted excitedly. Fortunately, this was not a snowy mountain. Otherwise, such a shout could easily cause an avalanche. After using fly and featherfall, Su Len and Hathaway flew directly from the Sierra de Lotus to the foot of the mountain. The feeling of bungee jumping at high altitudes was amazing. After arriving, the two were not in a hurry to leave. Firstly, it was not early. Secondly, they had just experienced a fierce battle. Although they were not injured, they were mentally exhausted. After finding a rock wall to shelter from the wind, Su Len used the petrified mud to make a small house. They would stay there for the night. After putting down the things, Hathaway began to prepare food. Su Len then opened the system list to check his rewards. He had obtained 2 gold treasure chests from this mission. Su Len opened both of them. 2 lights flashed, and the system's cold voice rang in his ears. "Congratulations, host. You have obtained the skill Floating Lightning Array. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the item Reinforcement Order. Floating Lightning Array. After use, 8 lightning balls can be summoned around the body. The lightning balls can move according to the host's command. They will also cause lightning damage of 2 to 5 strength to surrounding enemies. There is also a chance of paralyzing enemies. Reinforcement Order. A special magic item created by the system skill, Ambush Array series, after combining with the laws of this world, can be used to summon a team of soldiers. Can be used in both non-combat and combat situations. Uses: 1/1. After spending 1 skill point to learn the Floating Lightning Array, the lightning energy in Sullen's body became more active. Ding! Detected that the host has some information about the Thunder Lightning Spear, Floating Lightning Array, Lightning Domain, and Lightning Mastery. Can be fused to upgrade. Would you like to upgrade? As soon as he learned the Floating Lightning Array, the system's voice rang in his mind. Su Len was pleasantly surprised when he heard it. After confirming with the system, he agreed to the fusion. Chapter 118. Beginning Skill Fusion. Fusion requires 1 skill fusion point, legendary, and 4 skill points. Do you agree? Agree. Fusion begins. As soon as Su Len agreed, his vision turned black. In the next second, his soul once again appeared in the strange space that he entered when he was advancing to legendary. Sullen's soul felt the endless power in this space. Once again facing the rules of this world, his soul gained more benefits. The faint lightning symbol in his soul also became clearer. Just as he wanted to understand it further, an irresistible force sent him back into his body. Fusion successful. Congratulations, you have received Thunder Territory. Basic. Thunder territory. Basic, you have preliminary control over the power of lightning. When you use lightning power again, it will be more powerful. You are immune to normal lightning damage. Lightning absorption. Basic, you can absorb any form of lightning attack, as well as electricity from the outside world. The absorbed lightning power can strengthen your next attack or be converted into your energy. Note: you cannot exceed the absorption limit. Thunder territory. After consuming a large amount of energy, you can create a world of lightning within 15 meters of yourself. All people or monsters that enter this area will be damaged by lightning. In this territory, your skills and strength will be increased by 100%. At the same time, all of Sullen's lightning skills disappeared. However, he could still use them now. Moreover, the energy consumption was reduced by half, but the power was increased. Could be said that after mastering the Thunder territory, Su Len could be considered a true legendary. He opened the attribute panel and added the remaining free attribute points to his strength. His strength broke through 40 points and reached 42 points. Name: Su Len, legendary. Race: human. Level: LV 21, 268-544, 1000. Strength: 42 agility, 31 spirit, 26 vitality, 32 charm, 20 command, 73 characteristics. Talent: valiant, thunderbolt, Pegasus, legendary sturdy, legendary tenacity, calm, elemental affinity, high lightning affinity, iron will, body hardening, beast face armor. Skills: dark ice slash, physical healing, life healing, red flame, forbidden magic, mechanical control, stone to mud, morale boost. Basic: earth spring shore kill. Skills: revolving, cherry master, heroic master, torrential rain, advanced, chaotic dance, beginner, weapon proficiency, swordsmanship 160, spearmanship 205, archery 102, throwing 96, horsemanship 145. Thunder and lightning domain. Basic: omitted, free attribute points 0, skill points 0. Su Len opened his eyes, and a bolt of lightning flashed across his eyes. The room didn't change much compared to before. The sky outside was dark, and Hathaway had already made a bonfire. She was humming an unknown tune as she cooked food. She didn't notice anything different about Su Len. A faintly discernible fragrance wafted out from the pot. Grumble. Sullen's stomach grumbled. Hee. Hathaway looked at Su Len, who was a little embarrassed. You must be hungry. Wait a moment. We'll be able to eat soon. Hathaway was cooking a type of dry food that Su Len had made before. It was a mixture of potato starch, oil, vegetables, meat, salt, and sugar. It could be eaten directly or boiled in water. It tasted pretty good. At the very least, the barbarians liked it. This was a type of dry food that Su Len had made based on his knowledge from his previous life. However, he had only made a small portion of it. It wasn't that the dry food wasn't good enough, but it was just too expensive to make. The barbarians were all gluttons, and each one could eat more than the other. Su Len had only made it twice before stopping. Other than the barbarians eating most of it, the rest was stored in the Lord's castle's warehouse. Although the dry food tasted pretty good, Su Len didn't want to let himself suffer. He was already a dragon slayer, so it wasn't too much to eat dragon meat. Wait a moment. Let's have a dragon feast today. Su Len took out a piece of Cryopterus tenderloin from his storage space. This part of the meat was tender, nutritious, and tasted the best. First, he used water to wash the blood out. Then, he added some neutralizing agents. With Sullen's current physique, these toxins were completely ineffective. However, Hathaway couldn't do the same. After neutralizing the toxins, Su Len purposely went outside to get some bird eggs. He wrapped the cut dragon tenderloin in bird egg white. If there was no starch, he replaced it with dry food. This way, he didn't need to add salt. Then, he poured some oil on it and fried it on the pan. As an experienced foodie in the foodie empire, although the conditions were poor and he could only find substitutes for many things, he could still make a delicious meal. Animal fat was more fragrant than vegetable oil. The smell of frying was very tempting. The dragon tenderloin wrapped in egg white and starch slowly turned golden. The oil sizzled, and a tempting fragrance wafted out from the tenderloin. Okay, it's ready to eat. Try it first. Sulen picked up a piece of cooked tenderloin with chopsticks and put it on a stone tray. At the same time, he passed a pair of chopsticks to Hathaway. Hathaway was very curious about this novel tableware. Then, she picked up the chopsticks and used it like Sulen. However, as she had just started using chopsticks, she didn't know how to use them. She spent a lot of effort and still couldn't pick up the piece of fried dragon tenderloin. Sulen, on the other hand, picked up a piece of golden tenderloin with his chopsticks and ate it happily. Bang! Seeing that Sulen was eating happily, but she couldn't pick it up, Hathaway angrily slammed her chopsticks on the table. Then, she snapped her fingers and summoned a magician's hand to grab it. Hathaway, a lady shouldn't use her hands. Sulen put down his chopsticks and laughed in his heart. Let me teach you how to use chopsticks. As he spoke, Sulen held Hathaway's little hand and taught her how to use chopsticks. It wasn't difficult to use chopsticks, and Hathaway learned it very quickly. Then, she picked up the dragon tenderloin and ate it quickly. Wow, it smells so good. It's so delicious. Hathaway's beautiful eyes curved into a pair of crescent moons. Eavesdropping on other people's conversations isn't a good thing, Sulen said to the outside after swallowing a piece of tenderloin. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just that the food you guys made is too fragrant. A short man about 1.3 meters tall appeared at the door. Although he wasn't tall, he wasn't a child. He was small and wore a brown shirt with 2 short swords on his waist. He also wore a brown hat and there was some hair on the back of his hands. It was obvious that he was a halfling wanderer. P.S. Thanks to Chang'e's family's Ho-E, heavy armored dragon rider, 200 Chidian coins as a reward. Thanks to Serene Blue Fireworks S, saying loneliness to loneliness, asking the clear sky with a pen, summoner of all things, troubled old waste, 100 Chidian coins as a reward. Thanks to Long Xian, 500 Chidian coins as a reward. Thank you to Xiangzhua. Thank you to 1607101921111128 for the 2,000 Chidian coins tip. Thank you to the sleepy Xiong Shuyu for the 5,000 Chidian coins tip. Fu Meng thanks. Chapter 120. Halflings were a rare and popular race. They lived in the Shire Mountains in the north. They were not tall, but every halfling was a gourmet. These little fellows were naturally optimistic and loved to travel. Most travelers liked to meet them. A halfling? Sulen raised his eyebrows and said in surprise. Hi. Hello. Can you give me some food to try? The halfling waved at Sulen. Hathaway looked at the halfling with a smile. It was her first time seeing this race. In the northern wasteland, any place with lush weeds could hide him. If he did not jump, others would not be able to see him. No wonder they became wanderers. This was their talent. Sulen nodded in agreement. The halfling walked into the stone room as if he was familiar with the place. His footsteps were light and agile. It seemed that he was not weak. He walked lightly to the bonfire and said with a smile, "It is really the blessing of the goddess of luck. I have been walking alone in the northern wasteland for many days. Finally, I can take a rest. Hello, friendly traveler. Hello, honorable witch." The halfling greeted her and then introduced himself. "My name is Frodo Wine Aglas. I am a gourmet who has traveled around the world. I am very happy to meet you here." Hathaway was very curious about the halfling. She looked at him with her big round eyes. Frodo was not angry. He looked at Hathaway with a smile and even winked mischievously. He then pretended to be hungry and said, "Honorable witch, can you take pity on me, a halfling who has not eaten well for the whole day? Can you give me something to eat? I am starving to death." Here you go." Hathaway laughed softly. She then took out a plate and a pair of chopsticks and handed them over. This little girl had learned bad things. After handing over the chopsticks, she did not intend to teach him how to use them. Instead, She looked like she was watching a show. Frodo was a little confused about the chopsticks, but he could not care less about the delicious food. He grabbed the chopsticks and tried to pick up the fried tenderloin, but he failed after a few tries. "All right, Hathaway." Glancing at Hathaway, who could not hold back her laughter, Sulen shook his head and picked up the chopsticks to show Frodo how to use the chopsticks. As a rogue, Frodo's fingers were very nimble. After only looking at it twice, he had successfully learned how to use chopsticks. He was much better than Hathaway. Frodo picked up a piece of pan-fried dragon tenderloin with his chopsticks and bit into it impatiently. Then, he savored the delicacy with a look of enjoyment. Halflings were a very optimistic race. They liked good food, tobacco, and wine. They also liked to party and hated boredom. They were a race that was naturally optimistic. Unlike the stubborn dwarves, halflings were gentle. Of course, they were also very curious and clever. They received the favor of many gods and were also a race that respected the gods. They were much more pious than humans. Even if they were facing some weak gods, they would still express their respect. Halflings loved good food, so many of them would travel around the world. These small people were naturally very agile. In addition, they were thin and small. Compared to humans, they were natural-born rogues. They relied on their powerful ability to escape from danger. They showed courage and curiosity that other races could not compare to. Of course, these small people also liked money. However, they were different from the misers. They also liked to spend money. As rogues, these small people often did some petty theft. At the same time, they liked to use their own cleverness to solve problems, such as playing tricks on the hotel bill. In most cases, these small people could easily gain the favor of other races. Of course, even if they encountered bad people, they could easily escape with their agile skills. Halflings were the kind of race that didn't make big mistakes, but had a lot of small habits. They liked good food, tobacco, and wine. They didn't have their own country. In their homeland, these halflings lived in villages. They were protected by the halfling guardian goddess Yodala. She was an ancient great god with great divine power. The halflings had been living under her protection for countless years. Their strong curiosity often led them to do some suicidal acts. This race often appeared in epics and legends. They were often the good companions of the protagonists in the stories. They were excellent rogues who helped the protagonists to complete their tasks. Basically, every halfling was a chef. It was very popular to have someone who was proficient in scouting, traps, stealing, and cooking in the team. Of course, in addition to these, the halflings also liked to boast. Because they had traveled to many places, these halflings were very knowledgeable. So, it was often seen that some halflings would boast about their experiences to others. "Wow, it's so delicious." Frodo swallowed the fried dragon tenderloin and kept describing it with all kinds of praises. "This is the first time I've seen such a cooking method. Although the materials used are very simple, I have to say the food is great. This tableware is also very novel. It's very convenient to make, and it's more flexible than a fork. You're the best human cook I've ever seen. Really, I swear." "Frodo, did you come to the northern wasteland to travel?" Sulen asked curiously. "Of course." Frodo swallowed the meat in his mouth and said, "I came here to look for spices. Last time I met a caravan, and the caravan accidentally got some spices. I bought them to try cooking and they tasted very good. But when I wanted to buy more, the merchant didn't have any more. In the end, he said that he bought them from someone else. According to that person, they found them in the northern wasteland. So you came to the northern wasteland alone to look for spices?" Sulen looked at the halfling speechlessly. "Of course. Isn't this delicious spices worth the risk?" Frodo said with conviction. Sulen didn't know if other people would do that, but he knew that these halflings would really do that. "By the way, what kind of meat are we eating? How come I've never eaten it before?" Frodo suddenly asked. "You're in luck. This is the tenderloin of Cryopteris. How does it taste?" Sulen said with a smile. "This is dragon meat?" Frodo looked at Sulen in surprise, his face full of disbelief. Sulen shrugged. "Of course. Don't you feel the energy in your body? Eating dragon meat can improve your body's quality. It's really dragon meat. Frodo looked at Sulen and Hathaway in surprise. Did you slay a dragon? Chapter 121. It's just a Euron. Sulen nodded. Euron is also a dragon, Frodo exclaimed excitedly. His expression was as if he had slain a dragon. I can't believe I'm eating with a dragon slayer. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Can you tell me how you killed that ferocious Cryopterus? Sulen realized that apart from enjoying good food, tobacco, and wine, these halflings were also very talkative. Ever since he came here, he had not stopped talking even when it was time to eat fried tenderloin. Sulen had no choice but to edit out the details of how he had slain the dragon and tell it to Frodo as a story. Frodo was obviously very satisfied with the story. Since Sulen had become a legendary, his appetite had increased again. With the addition of a halfling, the food he had prepared this time was obviously not enough. When he took out another piece of dragon tenderloin, Frodo volunteered to show off the halfling's cooking skills. As the race with the best cooking skills on the continent, Sulen was also very interested in the halfling's cooking skills. He agreed without hesitation. Frodo first took out a few jars and mushrooms from his pocket. I picked these up in the forest today. I've tasted them and they taste very good. After adding spring water to the pot, Frodo put the mushrooms and some wild vegetables into the pot to boil the soup. He then carefully opened the jars. The jars were filled with powders made from various spices, some of which he did not recognize. These are the spices I was talking about. I came to the northern wasteland to look for these spices. Frodo picked up a small jar and opened it. He then carefully poured out a small pile of spices the size of a fingernail. It's just a small jar. Cost me 500 kinner. But fortunately, my luck is not bad. Under the protection of the goddess, I finally found these spices. I don't have to worry about not having enough of them in the future. Sulen was also very interested in the spices that fascinated the halfling. As soon as the spices were poured out, Sulen smelled a familiar scent. Wasn't this cumin? It turned out that the halfling had come to the northern wasteland to look for cumin. While Sulen was still in shock, the halfling began to prepare the roast meat. Soon, a rich meat aroma wafted out, and the halfling began to sprinkle various spices evenly on the surface of the loin meat. All right, have a taste of my cooking. Frodo passed the roasted tenderloin to Sulen. Sulen took it and shared half with Hathaway. Then Sulen began to taste the halfling's cooking. Sulen had to admit that halflings were really good at cooking. Although the conditions were simple, the tenderloin roasted by Frodo tasted delicious, especially after adding cumin. Sulen ate a few pieces in a row. It could be said that this was the most delicious meal he had ever eaten since he came to this world. It could already be compared to some of the chefs in his previous world. Hathaway's belly bulged. She pouted her red lips, which made Sulen want to take a bite. Frodo was also happy that his food was recognized. After the three of them finished their dinner, they had a bowl of mushroom and vegetable soup. Although they were in the wilderness, the dinner was very sumptuous. After the meal, Sulen opened up another room in the stone room, and the three of them went to rest. After eating Cryopterus meat, Hathaway and Frodo's bodies felt a wave of energy slowly strengthening their physique. Sullen's physique was already very strong, and the Euron meat could no longer increase his physique. However, it could slightly increase his resistance to the cold. As the last wave of energy slowly merged into his body and disappeared, the system's voice rang in his ears. Congratulations to the host. After the battle with Cryopterus and bathing in the dragon's blood, your resistance to the cold has increased. Finally, after eating Cryopterus meat, your resistance to the cold has reached a critical point. You will be able to adapt to most cold climates, and your resistance to special cold climates has increased. When you are attacked by all ice spells or similar spells, as well as attacks with ice effects, your damage will be reduced by 5 points. You have received the talent Lesser Ice Resistance. After Sulen received the talent Lesser Ice Resistance, Hathaway and Frodo received the effect of +2 in strength and +1 in physique. This kind of increase in attributes would only occur when eating the meat for the first time. After eating the meat again, it would at most increase some temporary effects or the talent lesser ice resistance. There were many restrictions on the increase in attributes of the meat. Other than the fact that it could not be eaten multiple times, if the user's attributes were already very high and exceeded the range of the food, the user could only taste the meat to recover their energy. Hathaway's physique and strength were not high. As a wizard, close combat had always been her weakness. Now, she had consciously trained her close combat ability. The next day, Sulen woke up to a tempting fragrance. He lowered his head and looked at Hathaway in his arms. She was curled up on his chest like a kitten. He then pinched her little face. After a simple wash, he walked out of the stone room. "You're awake. Come and try my secret fresh fish soup," Frodo called out enthusiastically. The Cryopterus meat last night had brought him a lot of benefits. Although halflings were born with great agility, their strength was also not high. When a human reached adulthood, their strength could reach 8 points, but halflings could only reach 6 points. "It smells so good." Hathaway, who was still sleepy, immediately woke up after smelling the fish. "Beautiful witch, come and try the breakfast prepared by the gourmet Frodo." Frodo took out the cutlery and began to distribute the food. In addition to the delicious fish soup, Frodo also collected some wild fruits and a jar of honey in the wild. It had to be said that halflings really put in a lot of effort to eat. They could eat so much in the wild. The gourmet Frodo's destination was the south of Florence. He even wanted to go to the sea to try some of the local delicacies. Basically, all halfling gourmets would travel around the world. Sulen invited him to his territory as a guest. To be honest, Sulen also wanted this gourmet to teach the chefs in his castle. The chef slaves bought from Cult City were only average. After tasting the cooking skills of the halflings, Sulen suddenly felt that their cooking skills were unacceptable. Frodo immediately accepted Sullen's invitation. After all, it was on the way to Sullen's territory. Sulen also said that his territory had just brewed a new kind of wine. It was too tempting for a halfling who loved good wine. Chapter 122. When they resumed their journey, there was one more Frodo in the group. To take care of his short legs, Hathaway used a spell to control a giant antler deer for him to ride. "Thank you, beautiful Madam Hathaway," Frodo said with a smile. Frodo laughed as he rode on the giant horned deer. "Speaking of which, this is my first time riding a giant horned deer. Feels pretty good. At least those weeds can no longer block my eyes. I admit that you guys are very powerful for successfully killing Cryopterus. However, I once did something that you guys would never be able to do." Frodo and Sulen chatted as they talked about the interesting things that happened during his travels. After a while, Frodo could not help but start his daily routine. Bragging. These halflings liked to sit down with a pipe in their mouth. They enjoyed smoking while bragging to others. This habit was very similar to Sullen's previous life. "Really? I'm not kidding." Frodo took a deep puff from his pipe and blew out a beautiful smoke ring. He looked very serious and said in a deep voice, "I received a request from a duke to go to a giant dragon's lair to retrieve something for him." At that time, the giant dragon was at least 30 meters long. Its mouth was so big that it could swallow me and this giant antler deer. Its scales were indestructible and its claws were extremely sharp. Could easily crush a rock. As long as it touched me, it could easily tear me into pieces. Frodo held the pipe in his mouth and gestured the giant dragon's claws with his hands. He even acted as if he was still scared. Then his tone became very serious. The situation at that time was very dangerous. I tried my best to dodge the giant dragon's claws. There were a few times when I was almost killed by it. There is a limit to the strength of a human. However, each person's physique is different. If it were another human or halfling, they would not have been able to hold on for more than 3 minutes. However, facing this kind of danger, I managed to dodge the giant dragon's attack with a slide kick. That big guy with slow reaction did not hit me at all. Instead, I used my short sword to cut open the scales on its leg. He wanted to turn around and attack me, but in the end, I hid in his pile of gold and treasure. This difficult battle lasted for a long time. The narrow cave limited the dragon's flexibility, and in the end, he was fooled by me. After that, I easily took that item and left the dragon's lair. Although Su Len knew that he was talking nonsense, he still found it interesting to listen to his bragging. Even Hathaway, who was sitting in Sullen's arms, was listening to him bragging. With the defensive power of the dragon's scales, the 2 short swords in your hands, it's already not bad to leave a scratch on the scales. What do you think you're holding? Silver sword of Gith plus 10 divine weapon? Dragons rarely appeared in the human world. There were only a few giant dragons, and the strength of each was more exaggerated than the other. For example, the ancient red dragon, who was the queen of the southern sea, was a ruthless character. She occupied a prosperous shipping route and collected taxes there. All ships passing through here had to pay. The cunning red dragon queen also had an army of monsters under her command. She had firmly controlled the shipping route for 500 or 600 years. Until now, no one dared to kill a dragon. Those who dared to do so would be buried in their graves by now. The red dragon queen was not arrogant and brainless like the average red dragon. Instead, she was very cunning. She was also a magic addict. She liked to study magic and was very accomplished. At least, she was a legendary wizard. As a result, no one dared to provoke her. Imagine a giant dragon with legendary spellcasting ability. Spellcasting by giant dragons was not as troublesome as that of human wizards. Their spells were all instantaneous. With the explosive power of a giant dragon, even a team of legendary adventurers would not be able to do anything to it. Time stop, maze, great dissociation, and then a wave of attacks. Even a team would be wiped out before they could even attack. Even if they survived this wave of spells, they still had to face a giant beast that was far more powerful than a legendary warrior. The size of a giant dragon gave them a great advantage in close combat. These cunning giant dragons had a variety of spells and were full of magic. They had completely gotten rid of the magic net. With their magic power, it was not a problem for them to wipe out a few legendary adventurers. The giant dragons also had servants and armies. They had all kinds of traps and monsters to surround them. The number of tricks they had was enough to make one's scalp numb. Therefore, those giant dragons that were still alive and kicking were not easy to deal with. Therefore, the giant dragon that Frodo mentioned was at best a WIRM, one that had the intelligence of a wild beast. It did not have any spell-like abilities, nor could it breathe. It was a WIRM that could only engage in close combat. Su Len did not expose him. With such an interesting halfling around, the journey had become much more interesting. Although Frodo liked to brag, he was not bluffing. He exaggerated his adventures and told Su Len a lot of news from all over the world. The journey back was smooth. After 2 days, Su Len and his team finally returned to his territory. Wow, what's that? After entering his territory, Frodo was attracted by the 4 to 5 kilometers long aqueduct. It was close to 40 meters high and more than 4 kilometers long. It was a very spectacular building in this era. That's the city's water supply system. The water of the city is drawn in by it, Hathaway said proudly. And this building is powered by no magic at all. This is a miracle in the history of architecture, Frodo said as he looked at the aqueduct in surprise. Well, if you want to see it, there will be time in the future. Let's enter the city now, Su Len said as he waved his hand. The aqueduct is spectacular now. You will only know what a miracle is when he starts to build those miraculous buildings. Have you seen the Sky Garden, Arcane Garden? Have you seen the 4 divine beasts' altar? Have you seen the observatory? Have you seen the harvest altar? Have you seen the mechanical city? When all these miraculous buildings are built, you will be shocked to death. After entering the city, Frodo was surprised by the cleanliness of the city. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was the cleanest city he had ever seen. There were many rules in the city that he was curious about. For example, pedestrians and vehicles had to drive on the right side of the road. The streets were all the same height. Sulen returned to the Lord's castle. Chrissy had been waiting for him for a long time. She ordered her subordinates to arrange a place for Frodo to stay. Then she smiled and said, "Oh, so you're back. Why didn't you inform me beforehand? I could have prepared a welcome ceremony. There are a lot of Cryopteris. Get me one tomorrow. I want to be a dragon slayer too." "Hey!" He walked over and slapped her bouncy buttocks. This little girl had not been shot for 2 days. Her tail was sticking up. "Aya, what are you doing?" F***CK. Sulen carried Chrissy with one hand and dragged Hathaway with the other to the hot spring. He had been running around for a few days and even fought with the Cryopteris. Although he had the cleansing spell, Sulen still felt more comfortable in the hot spring. Moreover, if he did not use the plasma cannon to teach these 2 girls a lesson, they would rebel. If he did not use the plasma cannon, they would not be able to sleep tonight. Chapter 123. Sulen stored the Cryopteris meat in the warehouse. The Cryopteris meat could not be stored for a long time, so they were all made into dragon's breast. With the gourmet Frodo around, the taste of the dragon's breast was naturally very good. The 6 Cryopteris had a total of about 5 tons of meat and some internal organs. The internal organs had been preserved and given to Hathaway to process. These organs could be used to make magic potions. After the 5 tons of dragon meat were all made, there were about 2 tons of dragon's breast. Sulen gave some to Frodo as a gift. Of course, Frodo also gave some of the various spices he had collected to Sulen as a return gift. In this era, spices were not cheap. Although it was not as expensive as a kinner for a few grains of pepper, it was still very expensive. For example, the cheapest pepper cost 500 kinner per kilogram. Sulen had to buy spices from the caravans that came to trade every month. Now that he had these spices, Sulen planned to grow some in his territory. The spices trade had always been the most important trade in the southern seas. Many spices were produced on the islands in the southern seas. Even if Sulen could grow spices, the scale and quality of the spices would not be as good as the spices in the southern seas. Frodo was very curious about Sulen's territory. It was completely different from the cities he had been to before. It was too clean and tidy. He did not understand why Sulen spent so much effort and money on this place. Another thing that piqued his interest was the delicacies here. The rum tasted very good, and Frodo fell in love with it immediately. Other than the rum, there was also the way the food was cooked. On the continent, boiling, frying, and so on were the most popular methods. However, when he came here, he realized that they were actually stir-frying. The stir-frying method was indeed different. First, it required a special wok. Then, it would be fried with oil. The taste was indeed very delicious. Frodo had been going to the kitchen every day, and Sulen did not stop him. He wanted the gourmet to visit more often. Every time he went there, Frodo would cook a sumptuous and delicious meal, which was much better than what Suluin and the other chefs could cook. Moreover, following Frodo's cooking, the chef's cooking skills had also improved. Suluin even wanted Frodo to train several qualified chefs for him. Other than stir-frying, Frodo also liked eating ice cream. After trying the ice cream that was made with cream, honey, white sugar, and fruits, he instantly fell in love with it. He asked Sulen to learn how to make ice cream. In order to learn how to make ice cream, Frodo signed a lot of contracts. For example, he would help to plant spices, teach the chefs how to cook, and make a delicious meal every day. Sulen hung the head of a Cryopteris on the city wall of his territory. The ogre wizard accompanied the head. Those who were worried about the Cryopteris attack and wanted to escape immediately gave up the idea after seeing the head of the Cryopteris. A lord who could slay dragons was very rare in the human world. Sulen's reputation in his territory increased tremendously. If one opened the system's interface, they would find that the number of people who had fallen to 50 due to the arrival of the refugees and the pterosaurs had increased to 87 in just one day, and it was still increasing. The 6 Cryopteris obtained quite a lot of dragon skins. Although a lot of them were damaged in the battle, there was still a lot left. A pterosaur with a wingspan of 12 meters was even bigger than a raging wind tiger's. However, not all dragon skins were suitable for making leather armor. The ones on the wings were more suitable for making blank scrolls. Sulen and Hathaway calculated that they could make at least 110 sets of leather armor from the pterosaur skins. The pterosaur leather armor was tough and had a natural +1 enchantment. If they could find an alchemist to enchant it, they could make a good magic equipment. Other than these, there were also 3 dragon penises. These were good stuff. If they were auctioned in Cult City, the nobles would go crazy for them. If there was a chance, Sulen could prepare an auction to attract more people to his territory. After dealing with these things, Sulen looked at the 13 dragon eggs in his hand. It was not easy to hatch a pterosaur dragon egg. It required a special environment. Just like how red dragons needed a rich fire element to hatch, these Cryopteris needed an environment rich in ice element to hatch. However, even if the environment was suitable, the incubation rate of Cryopteris was not high. In fact, the incubation rate of giant dragons was not high. Under normal circumstances, it would be good to have a 50% incubation rate. If Sulen wanted to hatch these dragon eggs, he would need to prepare a professional incubation room. Luckily, Hathaway knew how to build an incubation room to hatch pterosaurs. After all, dragons were powerful creatures. Many wizards were studying their secrets. There was a time when many dragon apprentices appeared among the wizards. These dragon apprentices were different from normal sorcerers. Their physical attributes were off the charts. It was said that there was a legendary dragon apprentice whose body was even stronger than a legendary warrior. Although their spells were not as powerful as wizards, they were still very strong. Pterosaur dragon eggs could not be stored for long. If they were placed in a normal environment, the incubation rate of the pterosaur dragon egg would be reduced. The second day after Sulen returned to his territory, he began to build an incubation room with Hathaway. The incubation room had to be clean and tidy. It was best to build an elemental pool in the room. Abundant elemental energy was very helpful for the hatching of dragons. Of course, this was something only the great wizards could do. Building an elemental pool was not as simple as digging a puddle. The elemental pool gathered liquefied elemental energy. In order to reach this level in the main material world, one had to connect the 4 major elemental planes. This step alone could only be done by a great wizard. Of course, one also needed to have the coordinates of the 4 major elemental planes. At the same time, one also needed to be on guard against the elemental creatures that might come and cause trouble when the channel was connected. The elemental pool was also the essence of a wizard tower. Only a wizard tower with an elemental pool could be considered a real wizard tower. Without an elemental pool, no matter how tall and grand the tower was, it would still be an ordinary building. It was meaningless to a wizard. Therefore, only wizards above the level of a great wizard could have their own wizard tower. It was very difficult to build an elemental pool. At least, from the various materials that Hathaway reported, Sulen could not afford them. Astral dust, arcane crystals, all kinds of magic gems, arcane dust, runic steel, etc. They were all very expensive. Chapter 124. It was impossible to build an elemental pool right now, unless Hathaway advanced to the level of a great wizard. However, the incubation room still needed to be built. High-quality incubation rooms had high-quality incubation rooms, and low-quality incubation rooms had low-quality incubation rooms. There were not many requirements for the main building of the incubation room. Sulen had built it in no time. Without an elemental pool, Hathaway was going to build a rune circle to gather the surrounding elemental energy. Elemental energy was widespread in the main material world, but except for a few places, most places did not have a high concentration of elemental energy. These elemental energies usually wandered around. Wizards had discovered runes that could gather elemental energy, and they would use these runes to form a rune circle to gather the wandering elemental energy. More advanced runes could even connect with the energy of the earth veins and transform an area into an elemental active area. It was said that only the most powerful wizard organizations could do this, and those organizations would also use this technology to cultivate all kinds of magical plants. The incubation room built by Su Luan had an area of 150 square meters. Each ice Quetzalcoatlus egg occupied an area of 10 square meters. In addition to the runic matrices, it was better to put some ice magic stones in the incubation room to hatch the ice Quetzalcoatlus. Hathaway had some cold moon stones in her hand. They were moon-white stones, a kind of low-level magic stone. They felt cold in her hand. Although they were low-level magic stones, they were enough to hatch Cryopteris eggs. After all, it was just a Euron. The incubation room was made of marble, and the floor was made of obsidian. In fact, it would have been better to use obsidian, but Su Len did not have that many obsidian stones. Hathaway summoned the wizard's hand and used a special rune-carving knife to carve a rune circle on the obsidian. She spent the whole morning carving hundreds of runes in the room. Then she used the blood of the ice Quetzalcoatlus and some other magic materials to make rune ink. She blended the rune ink with the engraved runes, and the rune circle was completed. Activate it and test its effect. Hathaway snapped her fingers and stored all the raw materials before activating the runic matrix. The nodes lit up one by one, and the runic matrix was officially activated. Su Len felt a breeze appear in the room and then disappear. Why isn't it working? Could it have failed? Su Len asked curiously after waiting for a while, but nothing happened. How could I fail? I am an intermediate alchemist. Hathaway retorted. Then why aren't there any changes? Su Len pointed at the incubation room. This is a low-level array. It's normal for it to take effect slowly. Hathaway was a little lacking in confidence. Then, she said indignantly, besides, who asked you to not have high-level materials? It's already very good that I can make this for you. Well, okay. Su Len was a little embarrassed. After all, he couldn't ask for too much if the materials were not good enough. Fortunately, the effects of the runic matrix were still there. After a while, Su Len could clearly feel that the elemental concentration in the incubation room had increased by a lot. Put the Cryopteris eggs in these positions. The elemental energy around them will be poured in. Hathaway placed the Cryopteris eggs in the designated positions one by one, and then activated the runic matrix. The elemental energy around them was converted into aqua-blue ice elemental energy. Then it was guided out through the runic matrix. Then it was transported to the runic matrix in a very gentle manner before it was released slowly. Outside, countless aqua-blue light spots floated up and merged with the Cryopteris eggs. That's it. Su Len was a little disappointed. Even a 50-cent special effect would be better than this. Okay, as long as the runic matrix is activated, these Cryopteris eggs will slowly hatch, Hathaway said with a relaxed expression. Are you ready for the taming technique? Su Len asked. The main reason why it was difficult to tame dragons was because of their inherited memories. Although Cryopteris was only a Euron, it also had inherited memories. It was just that it was much less than a real dragon. Don't worry, I have already engraved the taming matrix in the runic matrix. When they hatch, the taming will be complete. Hathaway said with a smile. But you have to give me one of these hatched pterosaurs. I want to be a tool. Don't worry, I will definitely give you one. Su Len rubbed Hathaway's head. Ding, the construction of the incubation room is completed. Territory taming has been enhanced. Incubation room incubates magical beast eggs and increases the incubation rate. There is also a 1% chance that the hatched creature will mutate. Energy gathering +3, incubation effect +3, taming success +10, mutation +1. Incubation status. Incubating. Type. Cryopteris. Number, 13. Estimated incubation time, 46 days. Looking at the incubation room's attributes, Su Len was a little surprised. He didn't expect this building to be recognized by the system. Looking at the attributes of the incubation room, it could even increase the incubation rate. As for the 1% mutation rate, it depended on luck. After placing the Cryopteris eggs, Su Len and Hathaway left the incubation room. They found 2 barbarian warriors and asked them to guard the incubation room and not let anyone else in. Su Len then left with Hathaway. The incubation rate of a dragon egg was generally about 50%. As a subspecies of Cryopteris, it was slightly higher, but it still only had a 60% incubation rate. In fact, the incubation rate of a dragon egg would become obvious after a period of incubation. The stronger the dragon egg, the higher the incubation rate. Dragon eggs that had low vitality or had begun to weaken would not hatch. As their vitality weakened, these dragon eggs would eventually become dead eggs. In fact, even after a Cryopteris was hatched, it would take at least 5 years to grow before it could be used in battle. Cryopteris needed 10 years to reach adulthood. Their lifespan was between 200 and 300 years. It was very difficult to train them to become dragon knights. After all, Sulen didn't have a suitable person to be a dragon knight. The barbarians were more suitable for rushing forward. Humans could do it, but to become a dragon knight, they needed to be at least a knight commander. The drows were quite suitable. They were strong, light, and agile. It was just that the drows didn't trust Sulen yet. Sulen had always been envious of the drows. It was said that the drows were very open and had good figures. They had slim waists, full buttocks, long legs, charming looks, high flexibility, and superb riding skills. Bah! I'm saying that the drows are very suitable to be scouts. Chapter 125. Sulen was playing with an exquisite token. There was only a relief of a soldier on the token. The back of the token was smooth and there was nothing on it. This token was the reinforcement order that he had obtained from the golden treasure chest. According to the system, this token could summon a troop of soldiers. Sulen was a little hesitant. He was not sure what kind of soldiers the system would summon. Forget it. I'll just summon them and see. Sulen threw the token up and put it into his pocket. He then rode his horse and left the town. Without bringing anyone, Sulen left the territory alone and found an empty wilderness. Sulen took out the reinforcement order and hesitated for a while before choosing to use it. A light flashed and the reinforcement order disappeared. Then, a system notification rang in his ears. Ding! The host has used the reinforcement order. A troop of soldiers is about to arrive. Just when Sulen was puzzled, a portal opened in mid-air. Then, a troop of soldiers walked out of the portal. These soldiers were wearing armor and holding weapons. There were about 40 of them. Half of them were spearmen and the other half were archers. Their equipment looked good. Soon, 2 soldiers who should be the team leaders walked to Sulen and saluted. General, the spearmen and archers have all arrived. Sulen was a little surprised to see these soldiers in front of him. Although they looked like ordinary people, they were completely different creatures in the system interface. Otherworld creature. War spirit. Otherworld warriors summoned by magic. They do not have a physical body. Only when the summoning is successful will they automatically transform into something you are familiar with. They are loyal mercenaries. After death, they will return to the otherworld and wait for the next summoning. After communicating with these soldiers, Sulen realized that each of these war spirits had their own names and independent thoughts. They were like living humans, but in fact, they were similar to heroic spirits. Although their bodies looked like humans, they were actually made of energy. He opened the system interface and found this team in the military column. Loyalty and morale were both at 80, which was within the normal range. The system's products were really good. The 2 teams of spearmen and archers in front of him were all veterans. The 20 spearmen had all reached the level of elite spearmen, and the captain had reached the level of heavy armored spearmen. The heavy armored spearmen were already at the level of knights. Although they were not as strong as barbarians, they were not afraid of death, which was very scary. Similarly, the group of archers in front of him were all elite longbowmen. The advancement of archers started from recruit archer, then longbowman, elite longbowman, strong longbowman, and finally sharpshooters. As for condor archers, it was a special advancement. The captain of the archer squad was also a knight-ranked archer. Su Luan checked the attributes of the spearmen. They were weaker than the barbarians, but they also had the talents of strength, tenacity, and courage. They also had a passive skill, good training, and 3 skills. Good training. Long-term strict training allows them to familiarize themselves with various military skills. Even if they encounter a surprise attack, they can form a suitable military formation in the shortest time possible. They are disciplined and obedient. They are rare elite soldiers. Courage. After strict training, the spearmen dare to face any military formation. Will +2. Spear formation. Spear formation. Basic skill of the spearmen. After strict training, the spearmen will form a dense defensive spear formation. Stab. Stab. Increase attack speed by 50%. Stab with a weapon in an instant. Armor break +2 effect. There is a certain chance of piercing. Spear assault. Spear assault. Elite spearmen form a cone formation to perform a rapid assault. Movement speed increased by 50%. Attack power increased by 50%. Armor break +3 and piercing effect. After the assault, they will enter a weakened state. All attributes reduced by 20%. Spear assault made Sullen's eyes light up. This skill was completely used to deal with large-scale battles. The more the number, the more destructive it would be. When 2 armies suddenly used it in a battle, it could directly break through the enemy's defense line. Of course, the weakness of this skill was obvious. If the enemy had a large number of archers, they would suffer heavy losses. However, Su Len did not care. After all, there were definitely many types of soldiers on the battlefield. It was rare for a single type of soldier to appear. The attributes of the archers were not weak. These archers looked strong and muscular. Their arms, especially, were obviously thicker than the spearmen. Because they often used the bow, their arms were very strong. Archers were not weak in close combat. In fact, they were not weaker than ordinary soldiers except for not wearing armor. There were many cases of the English longbowmen in his previous life. The French soldiers wore heavy armor and risked their lives to rush through the rain of arrows of the English longbowmen. It was not easy to get close to them. They imagined that they could kill these longbowmen like cutting vegetables. In the end, because of the heavy armor, the long-distance running caused their physical strength to be exhausted. Instead, they were defeated by the archers in close combat. These archers had the talents of strength, dexterity, and accuracy. Dexterity. Body is flexible. Attack speed increases by 20%. Dexterity +2. Accuracy. Accuracy increases by 20%. They also had the passive skill of good training. The skills of the archers were also good. 3 skills: volley, continuous shot, and long shot. Volley. After strict training, the archers are able to form a dense formation and launch a rain of arrows at an area. Rapid fire. After arduous training, these archers have become very proficient in their skills. They can fire 3 arrows consecutively in a short period of time, causing a large area of damage with arrows. Armor break +1. Long shot. Attack range increases by 20%. Attack speed decreases by 50%. Arrows are powerful. Armor break +2. In fact, the value of the archers among these soldiers was higher than that of the spearmen. A spearman's training time was short, and it was easy to become a fighting force. Archers were different. In addition to physical fitness, they also needed some talent and skills. Therefore, the price of archers' training was higher. After the group of soldiers in front of him joined Sullen's camp, Su Len had to pay them a salary. If the salary was delayed, their morale would drop. At the same time, their loyalty would also decrease. Once the loyalty fell below 60, these soldiers could defect at any time. The cost of maintaining these soldiers was not low. A spearman needed 3 kinnur a month, and an archer needed 4 kinnur a month. In addition to these, there were also various logistical supplies such as food and equipment. A group of 40 people would need to spend thousands of kinnur a year. However, compared to their combat power, it was all worth it. Su Len brought these soldiers back to the territory. As for the origin of these soldiers, he only said that they were here to seek refuge. It did not matter whether others believed it or not. After all, this was Sullen's territory. He had the final say. These soldiers were arranged to stay in the barracks. Su Len had already ordered people to build new homes for them. Su Len had already treated these soldiers as humans and not the cold numbers of the system. After all, other than Su Len, no one knew that they were summoned by the system. Chapter 126. The military strength of the Northgard castle had changed a lot. There were only 71 barbarian warriors in the beginning, but now, there were a total of 186, including the security team and the new recruits. 30 security team, 40 new recruits, and 5 scouts who had just finished their training. Together with the barbarian guards, this was Sullen's military strength. The population of the Northgard castle had exceeded 2,000 people. Of course, 70% of them were Sullen's serfs. Even the refugees had to work for Su Len to survive. Because of the trade, there would be a few caravans coming to the Northgard castle every month. The sugar from the Northgard castle was very popular in the northern provinces. Because of the sugar, the high-quality rum had successfully opened up a market among the nobles. It had been almost 4 months since Su Len came to the Northgard castle. This small town deep in the northern wastelands had gained some fame among the nobles. As long as nothing unexpected happened, Su Len would become a real landed noble. By then, many nobles would come to curry favor with him. After all, a rising landed noble could enfeoff a large number of low-ranked nobles. Su Len had never thought of accepting those nobles' allegiance. Those nobles would surely fail. He had no intention of enfeoffing them. He was busy harvesting food now. It had been more than 3 months since the first piece of farmland had been cultivated. The first batch of potatoes had matured after about 100 days. The remaining potatoes would also mature in the next half a month. As long as there was a good harvest of potatoes this year, Sullen's territory would not suffer from a famine even if they stopped planting potatoes in the next few years. Of course, from next year onwards, Su Len would reduce the number of potatoes planted and switch to wheat and other crops. After all, he did not want to keep eating potatoes, noodles, steamed buns, and scallion pancakes. Weren't they delicious? Why would he eat potatoes when he had the money? He planned to slowly try all the different delicacies from his previous life. The first batch of land cultivated in the Northgard castle was a good paddy field. The soil was quite fertile. Although there was no fertilizer, the yield of potatoes was still quite good. Arriving at the first batch of potato fields, Su Len randomly selected a few pieces of farmland, and then let the serfs begin to harvest the grain. "Monseigneur, I've arranged for people to take care of the land you've allocated." A servant came to Sullen's side and said. Su Len looked around and found that the serfs were ready. He nodded and said, "Let's start. Begin." A soldier with a loud voice shouted from the side. Along with his order, the serfs in the specially selected fields began to harvest potatoes with various tools. The soft soil was turned over. He grabbed the vine and pulled it out forcefully. Strings of potatoes were pulled out from the soil. After shaking off the soil, the potatoes, which were at least the size of a fist, were arranged into a string. It looked very pleasing, and a string of potatoes weighed a few kilograms. The vines of the potatoes were removed, and the fruits were thrown into the bamboo basket at the side. The potatoes in each plot of land were placed together to be weighed. This was done to maximize the estimation of the yield per mu of land. Although there were still errors, the difference was not big. Through this, the yield of potatoes this year could be roughly estimated. 1 mu of land was not big, and these serfs were very fast. They all wanted to leave a good impression in front of Su Len. As long as Su Len was happy and rewarded them with a few points, they would be able to get their freedom faster and then have their own land. These people were very satisfied. Soon, the potatoes in the vicinity of 1 mu of land were harvested. Su Len asked people to weigh the potatoes. After the soil was sifted off, the potatoes in the baskets were weighed. The potatoes produced in each plot of land were weighed and marked one by one. Potatoes were a crop widely planted in this world. The staple food of most civilians was potatoes, who asked this crop to be easy to grow and have a high yield. Only a small amount of land would grow crops such as rice and wheat, which were usually used to pay taxes. Moreover, rice and wheat were basically used as daily food by nobles or big merchants. The taxes in this world were not low, because the taxes in various places were set by the lords. The benevolent ones were fine, but the greedy ones would collect all kinds of taxes, such as catching fish in the river, cutting firewood in the mountains, and paying a poll tax every year. In short, all kinds of taxes were collected from clothing, food, housing, and transportation. Every year, when farming, the nobles' land had to be cultivated first before they could plant their own fields. Every week, they had to work for the lords for 3 days. If it were not for potatoes, half of the civilians in this world would have starved to death. About half an hour later, the yield of potatoes in these plots of land was calculated. Among them, the yield of potatoes in the largest plot of land was 303 kilograms, and the yield of potatoes in the smallest plot of land was 254 kilograms. The yield of 200 kilograms was not too high. Because it was a new plot of land, the yield in the first year would be lower. Next year, when there was fertilizer, the yield would be higher. Even with the current yield, the yield of these plots of land was enough to feed tens of thousands of people. Potatoes could be planted 3 times a year, so for a long time he did not have to worry about food. After the food problem was solved, Sulen could increase the number of people brought in. At least 300,000 mu of land could be cultivated in Northtown Castle, enough to feed 50 to 60,000 people. Right now, only about 10,000 mu of land had been cultivated. He did not want to leave those plots of land empty. Northtown Castle was located in a remote area, but if it were not so remote, it would not be his turn to cultivate this land. It would have been occupied by others long ago, so there was nothing to complain about. If Sulen wanted people, he could only rely on the trade caravans to bring in refugees every time, or by slaves from Cult City himself. However, both of these methods required a lot of money, and the results were slow. Unless Sulen was confident that he could get a recruitment order every once in a while, this was the best way. As for the drows, Sulen also wanted to recruit them. The drows were also a powerful race, and compared to the obvious shortcomings of the barbarians, the drows had almost no shortcomings. Of course, if they did not believe in the Dark Maiden, Sulen would not have dared to accept them. Except for the drows who believed in the Dark Maiden, in Sulen's opinion, 9 out of 10 drows were mentally ill. They plotted all kinds of schemes and murders every day. If they had the time, they might as well practice their writing skills. So far, Sulen still did not take the initiative to get in touch with the drows. After experiencing the escape and finally settling down, the drows were actually very sensitive and insecure. They had lived in an environment of mutual deception for a long time, which made it difficult for them to trust others. The best way for Sulen now was to express some kindness to them, but not to get too close to them. In fact, Sulen had already treated the drows as meat in his mouth. Those drows who lived in the underworld all year round could not adapt to the environment of the northern wilderness. One could not imagine how cold the winter in the northern wilderness was without experiencing it. Chapter 127. Frodo the Halfling was very happy during this period of time. Not only did he find the spices in the wilderness, but he also learned a new way of cooking stir-frying. This new way of cooking surprised Frodo. During this period of time, he made many delicious dishes under the guidance of Sulen. He was now very confident that he would be able to participate in the King of Chefs tournament and win the championship when he returned to the Shire. At the same time, he was also very curious about Sulen's cooking. After all, these dishes were all Sulen's suggestions. Ice cream, red braised pork, stir-fried pork, mushroom stir-fried pork, cumin mutton, and many other dishes were all suggested by him. Frodo almost wanted to take apart Sulen's brain to see how many strange ideas were hidden in it. For example, just now, Sulen told him how to make a snack called potato chips. Frodo had already tried to make it according to Sulen's description. The reason why Sulen made potato chips was because there were too many potatoes. He could not eat mashed potatoes every day, so making some snacks was a good idea. The process of making potato chips was not difficult. All he had to do was to cut the potato chips into thin slices and fry them in a pot of oil until golden brown. When he took them out of the pot, he just had to sprinkle some spices on them. The only difficult part was cutting the potato chips. However, this was just a basic operation for a rogue who could play with his dagger. The last time they had a hot pot, Frodo had demonstrated how to slice mutton. He had sliced a large piece of mutton into slices as thin as a cicada's wing in no time. His knife skills were even better than those of the butcher from East Lishun in his previous life. Soon, the fragrant potato chips were ready. Sulen tasted one. It was crispy and delicious. It was not much different from the ones he had eaten in his previous life. Hathaway and Chris liked it even more. From today onwards, other than ice cream, they also added potato chips to their snacks. Hey Sulen, your territory has a good harvest. Do you want to hold a harvest festival or some other celebration? I think it would be great to hold a fishing competition, Frodo suggested while munching on potato chips. Harvest festival and celebration? What does it do? Sulen was puzzled. Festivals can make the residents of the territory feel happy and increase their sense of belonging to the territory, Frodo said with a smile. All right, I agree. Sulen thought for a while. Organizing a festival in his territory would cost a lot, but just like what Frodo had said, it could increase the sense of belonging of the residents in his territory. In other words, it could increase the morale of the people. After this period of migration, the people's sentiment in Sullen's territory had declined. After all, no matter how good Sullen's treatment was, many of them were still slaves. Although killing the pterosaur had increased the sentiment and stability of the territory by 10 points, it was still around 80 points. You agreed? That's great, Frodo said excitedly. Basically, all halflings loved all kinds of celebrations. I think we can hold a gourmet food competition and a fishing competition. To be honest, in my hometown, the Shire, I have won both the gourmet food competition and fishing competition. This is the first time in hundreds of years that someone has won both the gourmet food competition and fishing competition. Sulen did not believe Frodo's boasting about winning both the gourmet food competition and fishing competition because many halflings would boast like that. However, most of them boasted about winning the fishing competition or the gourmet food competition. It was very rare for someone to win both the gourmet food competition and fishing competition. However, Frodo now had the trump card of cooking. Perhaps he really had the chance to win both the gourmet food competition. As for the champion of the whole Shire, it was not certain. The Shire was a gathering place for villages. Every village would hold such competitions, but there was no unified large-scale competition. Therefore, the champion that Frodo mentioned was most likely the village that won the first place. A gourmet food competition and a fishing competition? I think it's okay, but add an archery competition and a martial arts competition, Sulen said after thinking for a while. Since he had decided to hold a festival, he might as well make it bigger. An archery competition and a martial arts competition? Frodo shrugged. He was not very good at these two competitions, but it should be very lively. That was enough for him. The fishing competition was soon held. There were not many people participating in the fishing competition. Most people went to participate in the martial arts and archery competition. Especially the barbarians, they all signed up for the martial arts competition, while the archers signed up for the archery competition. Sulen did not participate in these two competitions. After all, if he participated, the others would not be able to have fun. Therefore, he brought Hathaway to participate in the fishing competition. This will make it more festive, Frodo said excitedly. Then, he took out a few pieces of a rod from his pocket and connected them together. In a few seconds, he had assembled a fishing rod. Then, he put the bait on and started fishing. Today, I will show you the skills of the Shire's fishing champion. Sulen also made a fishing rod and went to the side to fish. Beside him was Hathaway. Hathaway also participated in the fishing competition, but she was not interested in it. It was Hathaway's first time fishing, but her luck was unexpectedly good. After a while, her fishing float started to sway. She used her arm to pull it up. Don't rush. The fish is testing the water. If you move, it will run away, Su Len quickly stopped her. You are quite lucky. This fish should be a big one. Really? Then why are we eating the big fish tonight? Hathaway said excitedly. Took the bait. At this moment, Hathaway's fishing rod suddenly dropped. The straight fishing rod was bent into a bow, and the fishing line was pulled tightly. Release the line, release the line, release the line slowly. Su Len instructed from the side. Yes, just like that. Release the line slowly. This will exhaust its strength without breaking the fishing line. Isn't this too troublesome? Hathaway frowned. I got it. She snapped her fingers, and a transparent hand suddenly appeared in the water and lifted the big, lively fish out of the water. Su Len was speechless. This fish is at least 15 pounds. Hathaway said excitedly. Su Len said, the fun of fishing is to wrestle with the fish. You rely on a thin fishing line and use superb skills to catch them successfully. Only then will you be satisfied. You are not very flexible when fishing like this. Hathaway did not hear Su Len at all. She threw the fish into the bucket and continued fishing. However, her luck seemed to be off the charts today. Within a few minutes, the second fish took the bait. Su Len did not catch a single fish. Similarly, the boastful Frodo also did not catch a single fish. Next, fishing became a personal show for Hathaway. The third, fourth, and fifth fish were caught one after another. Frodo finally could not sit still. He threw down the fishing rod, picked up a harpoon, and jumped into the water with a splash. Soon, a figure came out of the river with the harpoon in his hand raised high. There was a fish that weighed about 5 kilograms on it. He smiled happily and said, I caught one too. This is a fishing competition, not a harpoon. Su Len rolled his eyes. You are cheating. You are disqualified. In the end, Hathaway won the competition. The prize was 3 plasma cannons. The other competitions also decided the winners. As expected, Johnson won the combat competition. The archer team leader won the archery competition. At night, the territory held a banquet. The entire Northgard castle became very lively. Su Len also heard the system notification. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have successfully held a harvest festival. The people are very satisfied with this festival. Popular sentiment +10. Congratulations to the host. You have activated the festival system. The current festival is Harvest Festival. Having a festival can make the people in your territory peaceful and prosperous. Harvest Festival. A grand festival can bring happiness and a sense of belonging to the people. Popular sentiment +10. Prosperity +5. Chapter 128. 5,000 acres of potatoes were harvested. On average, 250 kilograms of potatoes were harvested per acre. After counting, they had harvested a total of 1,250 tons of potatoes. The potatoes were enough to last them for a whole year. Other than that, the Northgard castle also stored a large amount of dried meat and salted fish. Even the spotted antelope was growing well. The Northgard castle was basically self-sufficient now. The harvest festival was over, and the weather in the Northgard castle was getting colder. It was winter now. In order to prepare for the winter, the construction of the territory had slowed down. More slaves and refugees were sent to cut down trees to make charcoal and other supplies for the winter. Su Len was watching Hathaway test a few bottles of potions in her lab. To be honest, he had forgotten about these potions since he found them in the ruins last time. Actually, it was the author who forgot about them. He found them when he was processing the Cryopterus meat. He wanted to show them to Hathaway so she could identify what kind of potion it was and whether it could still be used. Hathaway snapped her fingers and controlled the burette with the wizard's hand. She dripped a few drops of liquid into a measuring cylinder filled with a blue solution. She then shook the liquid evenly. Soon, the liquid in the cylinder underwent some strange changes. Hathaway put down the measuring cylinder and pointed at a bottle of potion. I'm in luck. This bottle of potion is well preserved. The potion's effect is still intact. What about the other potions? Su Len asked. The rest of the potions are either expired or have lost their effect. They can't be used anymore. Of course, you can try if you want to poison someone to death, Hathaway said as she resealed the potion and handed it to Sulen. Sulen took the bottle of potion. The red liquid in the crystal bottle bumped against the surface of the bottle and flashed from time to time. It looked a little strange. What's this potion for? It's a bloodline potion. If the right person uses it, he or she will have the corresponding bloodline and become a bloodline warlock. Hathaway poured the rest of the potions into a special container. She then added another type of potion. After a few potions were mixed, it turned into a murky solution. Bloodline potion? Are you saying that this potion can turn an ordinary person into a warlock? Sulen asked in surprise. Hua. Hathaway continued to say, don't be happy too early. Although the bloodline potion can allow an ordinary person to become a bloodline warlock, there are prerequisites. What conditions? If the bloodline potion is given to an ordinary person, then the best time to use it is between the ages of 10 to 12, and the latest can't be over 16 because it takes more than a year for the bloodline potion to be fully integrated, and to become a warlock, one must awaken the bloodline before the age of 18. What if the user is not an ordinary person? Sulen waved the potion in his hand. If the user is a wizard or a wizard apprentice, the age limit can be extended to 30 years old. If the user is a knight, it can be extended to 20 years old. Hathaway combed her hair and continued, but I don't recommend using this bloodline potion. What's wrong with this bloodline potion? There are many types of bloodline potions, and each one has a different potential. The best ones are, of course, the bloodline potions of high-grade creatures such as dragons. This bloodline potion uses the blood of a mid-grade demon claw, so its potential is limited. Also, demon warlocks are not popular in the main material world. In fact, demon warlocks were not as simple as being unpopular. Because of the integration of the demon bloodline, these people would be constantly influenced by the will of the abyss. The stronger they were, the deeper this influence would be. In the end, they would fall into the abyss and become a real demon. Of course, there were also people in this world who wanted to become demons. After all, there were many people and there were all kinds of weirdos. After all, after becoming a demon, one's lifespan and strength would be greatly increased. According to the evolution of demons, as long as they didn't die, they could continue to evolve. Even becoming a demon lord was not impossible. Of course, the premise was that they didn't die. To be honest, demons advanced very quickly, especially the low-grade ones. These demons killed each other, and as long as they survived, they could quickly advance. There was no specific conclusion as to how long a demon's lifespan was, but one thing was certain. So far, not a single demon had lived to the end of their lives. Sulen didn't plan to use this potion, but that didn't mean it was useless. For example, he could create a small villain boss for himself to gain experience. A mid-grade demon would give tens of thousands of experience. If he was lucky, he could directly level up. Sulen casually threw the potion into his storage space and left the laboratory. Hathaway was busy during this time. There were a lot of materials that she needed to deal with. It was not easy to make suitable magic equipment with the materials of 6 frost dragons. Monseigneur, Mr. Xion has returned with the caravan. There are 2 centaur messengers and a team of centaur warriors. Just as Sulen was about to go to the training ground, a member of the security team hurried over to report. Take the team of centaur warriors to a residential area outside the town. Prepare some food for them and let them rest there. Be careful not to let anyone disturb them. Centaur messengers. Take them to the guest hall. Let Chris take care of them on my behalf. I'll be there soon. Sulen immediately ordered someone to make the arrangements. After greeting Hathaway, Sulen rushed to the castle. After changing into a set of luxurious clothes, he went to see the centaur messengers. To be honest, although Sulen had been in this world for a long time, this was the first time he had seen centaurs. The 2 centaur messengers were a male and a female. They had human facial features and green hair. The female centaur had a beautiful braid with some gemstones hanging from it. Her facial features were also very delicate. The male centaur had a strong body and was at least 2 meters tall. The contours of his muscles were obvious. It was obvious that he was a powerful warrior. The 2 centaurs had elf-like pointed ears and golden eyes. It was said that this centaur tribe had a part of the bloodline of the Dryads. This could be seen from their ears. The 2 centaurs in front of him wore white linen robes. The hem of the robes was very wide. Half of the robes fell down their bodies while the other half was draped over their backs. The 2 centaurs were both maroon. Even from a human's point of view, they were very handsome and beautiful. Su Len felt a surge of elemental energy from the female centaur. It was different from the elemental energy of wizards. This energy had a dignified aura. Su Len guessed that the female centaur was most likely a priestess. The centaur tribe was very widespread. They also believed in different gods. Some believed in the god of storms, while others believed in the goddess of nature and Mother Earth. It was said that the earliest centaurs had a part of the bloodline of the gods. Just like the human world, centaurs also had nobles and commoners. Normal centaurs had average intelligence and bad tempers. They were not easy to get along with. However, the noble centaurs were very intelligent. They had a wealth of knowledge and also had a priestess. The 2 messengers in front of him were clearly centaur nobles. Chapter 129. When Su Len came back, he saw a group of centaur warriors. They were all equipped with spears and bows. They were tall and strong, and they were even stronger than the barbarians that Su Len saw the first time. It was clear that the centaur tribe valued Su Len very much. No, it should be said that they valued this trade very much. Chris had already arranged for people to prepare a sumptuous meal. Because it was noon, there were many fruits and all kinds of meat on the table. The chefs had also specially roasted a whole lamb with some cumin sprinkled on it. The smell of it was very appetizing. Su Len also asked people to prepare desserts and ice cream. He also prepared 2 bottles of high-quality rum. Because of the centaur's body structure, Su Len did not prepare chairs for them. Instead, he prepared thick and soft cushions. The 2 centaurs were very satisfied with this arrangement. "Hello, human lord. I am Mission from the Samar centaur tribe. This is my brother Cain." Su Len did not expect the centaur tribe's messenger to be led by Mission, a female centaur. Mission was very interested in this human lord. When she entered the town, she saw the ogre wizard's head and Cryopterus' head hanging on the city wall. The centaurs were very clear about the strength of the ogre tribe, and the Cryopterus' head made her turn pale with fright. The powerful Cryopterus had the ability to fly. Not many people in this wasteland were willing to provoke them. Now that their heads were hanging on the city wall, she had to be careful and respectful. "Su Len, Lord of the Northern Castle," Su Len said with a smile. He then gestured to the prepared banquet hall and said, "I've prepared some things there. We can sit down and talk." Su Len had already noticed the small movements of the 2 centaurs. The centaur tribe's food was obviously not as good as the humans, let alone the food that was cooked by the halflings' chefs. Therefore, after smelling the aroma of the food, the glutton in his stomach began to stir. When they heard Sullen's invitation, they immediately agreed. When they arrived at the banquet hall, the 2 centaurs were very satisfied with the food prepared by Su Len. The fruits were okay since they were all gathered from the wilderness, but the fruit salad with cream and honey made them forget to leave. There was also a dessert called ice cream. It was simply delicious. That roasted antelope was also not bad. After tasting the food, Mission and Cain let go of their reservations and began to taste all kinds of food. "Lord Su Len, we are at war with the orc tribe in the north. We need a batch of weapons and food and of course wine." After finishing her meal, the beautiful mare finally remembered to talk about business. "That's not a problem. I can sell them all to you." Su Len nodded. These were originally prepared for trade. He put down the wine glass and continued, "But what are you going to use to trade?" In the wastelands, Kinner was basically not used for trade. After all, orcs, half-orcs, barbarians, centaurs, and half-elves rarely used Kinner. Most of the time, they used the ancient method of bartering. In fact, even human caravans that came to the wastelands to trade mostly used bartering. We can use longbows, horses, and furs to trade. Of course, we can also use some gold or silver. Mission put down the ice cream in his hand and said, "Gold and silver should be some raw ores. It seems like there are a lot of gold and silver mines in the wilderness." Su Len thought to himself, "We don't need gold or silver for now. You can use horses and longbows to trade." Su Len had already planned to form a cavalry and archer team. Although he didn't have a cavalry commander's seal and didn't have the system bonuses, forming a cavalry team was not a problem. "How many horses and longbows do you have?" Su Len asked. 200 fine horses and 100 longbows," Mission said. "We are going to trade for 200 sets of armor and 20 carriages of food. We also want 1 carriage of rum." 200 sets of armor, 20 carriages of food, and 1 carriage of rum. "I have all these goods, but you don't have enough to trade." Su Len took a sip of his wine glass and said, "The armor that the centaurs were talking about was not human armor. Due to their body structure, the centaur's armor had to be specially made. They had to link a human half-armor with a horse's armor. This kind of armor was equivalent to the armor of a human heavy cavalry, so it would not be cheap. At the same time, food was very precious in the wilderness. 20 carriages of food was not a small number. The centaurs in front of them were asking for a sky-high price. "Our horses are the best. They can support heavy armor and charge. Our longbows are also the best. If these things are transported to the human world, they will be popular goods. We think this price is reasonable," Mission said with a smile. "You also know that it is to be transported to the human world." Su Len leaned back in his chair. The wine glass in his hand was shaking rhythmically. The amber wine swayed back and forth in the glass. "But this is the wilderness. You are using the human world standards to set the price. You are being a hooligan," Su Len said with a smile. "Miss Mission, I am very sincere about doing business with you, but I don't see any sincerity in you." "Lord Su Len, how much do you think we should pay?" Mihian wasn't surprised. She had always been in charge of trading with humans in the Samar tribe. Even if she was ignorant at first, she had been in contact with human merchants for a long time, so she had some negotiation skills. 300 horses and 300 bows," Su Len said directly. "No, that's too much. 300 horses are fine, but not bows." Mission shook her head and refused. "We are now at war with the orcs. We can only sell 100 bows. But we can sell you some slaves and gold. Don't you humans like gold?" "What slaves? How much gold are you willing to pay?" "Some orc captives," Mission continued. "We can provide 200 orc laborers. They are much stronger than goblins, kobolds, and gnolls. Gold is 300 pounds according to your human standards. 100 pounds of gold." Su Len didn't expect the centaur tribe to be so rich. The level of smelting in this era was limited. The purity of gold was only about 91% of what it was in his previous world. A standard kinner weighed about 5 grams. In addition to gold, there were also some other metals mixed in. 300 pounds of gold was equivalent to 30,000 kinner. 200 orc laborers, 300 horses, 100 bows, and 300 pounds of gold. "This is our first trade, so I will take a loss and agree." Su Len thought for a while and pretended to agree. "Then I look forward to working with you." The beautiful little mare nodded excitedly. "You are a good person." Looking at the little mare's innocent eyes, Su Len felt a little guilty. However, he quickly convinced himself. After all, the other people and the centaurs gave a much higher price. Compared to them, he was already very kind. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.